intel from Lysychansk was sort of the safe marker that retreating forces had to reach. Now I think it's fair to say that Siversk is still considerably threatened, and the danger is that you can see the Russian front line, some of the main avenues of approach into and out of Siversk sort of run north to south. So if the Russian line approaches and can seize these key roads that run north to south, it can really reduce Ukrainian forces' mobility along the subsequent battlefield. You can see here that if you can establish a defensive line right along this roadway, it could be resupplied with vehicles that travel up and down the road. It can be a very powerful backline logistical tool for forces that need continuous resupply. But if you lose that, now you have to establish a front line where there isn't really a clear roadway, a clear resupply route for those troops on the defensive. So this may actually prove itself a really important line for Ukrainian forces to hold, right? Again, east of this road network here, running straight down, again, granting their forces a really robust resupply method. In contrast to the Russians, who will have to figure out somewhat more convoluted ways of getting supplies to their troops along the front line, especially in areas that aren't really road accessible. When we zoom out a little bit, I also am going to just gloat here because the Russian trolls in the comments had some very strong feelings about my assessment that the Russian forces would try to seize the Donetsk airport, right? The trolls, of course, were fervent in their belief that the airport was not operational to civilian traffic and therefore had no military value. But in fact, it doesn't take much more than some flat ground to convert a civilian airstrip, even one that's pretty destroyed, into a military airstrip. And you can see the Russian forces have been steadily trying to seize more and more of the territory of the airport, and they are starting to succeed, having established control south of the runway. And as we've talked about, when you're looking at an airport from a military perspective, military planes can land on way rougher terrain. They only need ground that is long enough for them to take off and land, flat enough that the stability of the aircraft while taxiing, taking off and landing is going to be consistent, and ideally of a surface that's at least as hard as, say, hard-packed dirt. The fact that the air traffic control tower is destroyed is not a problem. Military air operations don't rely on an elevated tower. It's a nice to have, but generally not essential. It's also not a problem that the terminal has been destroyed. Those can be those functions for military aircraft can be done with something as simple as a tent. That's what we did at Bagram Air Base. Of course, if you need the refueling areas, and you'll have to clear some debris from the roadway, but this is a pretty trivial matter. And if you can, again, secure the airport from enemy activity, you could have flights coming in as little as 7 days. So again, I think you're going to see the Russians seize this airport. I think you're going to see them possibly try to push out from either this direction here or this direction to Pokrovsk. Doing so will, of course, create a really robust southern prong and will enable them to potentially form the same cauldron that will swallow up Sloviansk and Kramatorsk, the two largest cities in the east in the Donetsk Oblast, still controlled by Ukrainian forces. In other news, of course, we are going to take a look at the biggest news is that Belarusian President Andrew Lukashenko is actually granting Russian forces access to Belarusian airspace as a show of support to Vladimir Putin. They said, actually, independent analysts have verified that for the first time since April 4th that they know of,